As well as being an author of a famous children's book series, a well-respected clergyman, and an active participant in the railway preservation scene, Reverend Wilbert Awdry was also an avid model train enthusiast. This guy's my hero. Wilbert built his own custom 00 scale models of the characters from the railway series. He had quite a few Thomases, Percys, James, Edward, Gordon, the Skarloey engines, pretty much everyone, even the Mid-Sodor cryptids. Over his time, he designed several layouts around the different railways and branches of the island of Sodor. He had a Tidmouth layout, the Mid-Sodor Railway, plans for a Skarloey railway that never came to fruition, and 2 different Ffarquhar branch layouts, aka Thomas's branch line. His second Ffarquhar layout was built to be an exhibition layout, so we could easily take it apart and transport it to train shows. This layout still exists today, and is currently under the care of the Narrow Gauge Museum at the Tallyclyn Railway in Wales. To operate this at exhibitions, Wilbert had to create a timetable to run the trains to. And you know him, when Wilbert created something, he put his all into it. And that is what we're going to be dissecting in this video today. Wilbert created a strict timetable for the Ffarquhar branch, and split it into 3 running sessions: morning, midday, and evening. The morning sequence can be easily found online, such as on the old Real Lives of Thomas site. But all 3 of them are present here in A Day on Awdry's Railway, on the Tallyclyn Railway's channel for members. A full day's operation, narrated by the big man himself, Wilbert Awdry. This video was extremely helpful in my research, and many thanks to the Tallyclyn for allowing me to use some footage from this. Every engine movement has a purpose, and each engine has a specific job. They bring up certain wagons from the junction, time is allotted to allow the shunting of those wagons, everything is accounted for. So I thought it'd be fun to really dive into it, and piece together what the true timetable for the entire branch line is. What exactly is a day in the life on Thomas's branch line like? So, while piecing everything together, I did come across some discrepancies. First off, the timetable here only really accounts for timings at Ffarquhar, which makes sense, since that's what the layout represents. Other stations on the line are not mentioned. However, it is explicitly stated in his lecture notes that it takes approximately 35 minutes for a full run from Ffarquhar to Tidmouth. So using that as a base, I've come up with approximate timings for the other stations accordingly. Secondly, the operations on Awdry's layout differ somewhat from what's shown to us in the books. A few of the specific maneuvers present in the stories that aren't reflected in his timetable include the following. We know from The Missing Coach that sometime shortly after 3:30, Thomas runs all the way to Tidmouth to collect his special coach from the Wild Nor'Wester, which he then takes up his branch line. We know from Stepney's special that Thomas returns to Tidmouth at some point in the evening. My guess is this is when he returns the special coach, and then heads back up the branch with his last train of the day. We know from Ghost Train that Percy's final movement of the day is running light engine from Knapford Harbor back to Ffarquhar at night. There are a couple other little differences that don't fully align, like how Toby consistently sheds at Ffarquhar in the stories, but canonically he sheds at Knapford. But the ones that I mentioned were the major ones that stuck out to me. And lastly, we know from the Island of Sodor book that the branch line operates 10 trains each direction daily, with paths open for other services, so there are at least 20 daily trips to account for. Because I want this timetable to be as authentic as possible, I've fudged some things here and there to accommodate these specific operations present in the stories. The timetable that I'm about to present is, for the most part, based on the actual Ffarquhar layout's timetable, with some things here and there tweaked by me. And that is enough blabbering from me, you all get the picture. Let's start this thing. Dawn breaks, and another busy day on Thomas's branch line begins. 3 engines in the shed at Ffarquhar are all awoken. The first engine out is Percy, bright and early. By 5:30, he is off down the line to Knapford Harbor, light engine. With a clear line ahead of him, he arrives at the harbor swiftly at 6, and begins his morning shunt. Back at Ffarquhar, Thomas and Daisy are brought out to be readied and fueled up. Daisy moves off to the fuel depot siding to be refreshed, while Thomas's fire warms him up. As Daisy is a diesel and quicker to start up, she always runs the first down service out of Ffarquhar. Down at Knapford Junction at the other end of the line, Toby, Henrietta, and Elsie emerge from their shed. At 6:40, they collect the quarry workers there bound for Ffarquhar Quarry, and set off up the line. This service is the first up train of the day, and they will stop at all the villages and halts on the way to collect workers. Around 6:55, they arrive at Elsbridge. Toby collects the empty milk van from the dairy there and adds it to his train. They continue on. 5 minutes later, at 7 o'clock, Percy departs Knapford Harbor with the Pickup, a slow goods that stops at each station to collect different wagons bound for Ffarquhar. He has to stop and wait at each station for any morning trains coming down the branch to pass. It is easily his least favorite job of the day. Put upon, that's what he is. At 7:20, Toby arrives at Ffarquhar. He arranges the milk van into its siding near the station to be loaded up, and then carries on with Henrietta and Elsie to the quarry along the tramway. At last, Daisy is ready to begin her day. Once Toby has cleared, she pulls into the station slowly, careful not to get too close to the milk van there, just in case anyone tries to couple her up to it. Fortunately for her, it's still being loaded. Daisy departs Ffarquhar at 7:40. She will travel all the way to Tidmouth on this journey, so all the commuters heading to work in the big city can be there at their desks before 9 a.m. After Daisy has left, Thomas is ready to begin his day. He collects Annie and Clarabelle from their shed and reverses into the station. The milk van is also ready now, so Thomas will take it with him on this journey. However, Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle form a push-pull set, and with a milk van to pull, it does bring into question, which direction does Thomas face? And all the engines for that matter. While the illustrations aren't consistent, of course, they face whichever way there is better for the scene playing out. With Toby and Daisy, it doesn't really matter, since they apparently have the ability to change which end their face appears on, with their cab on each end and all. Percy flip-flops often, but I think it makes the most sense for him to face north. Thomas also flip-flops often, always traveling forwards, no matter which way he's going. I should note that the TV series retroactively explained this by adding a balloon loop at Ffarquhar, so Thomas can flip around when he reaches the end of the line. Wonders of Sodor took this further by giving Thomas his own turntable at Knapford at the other end of the line, so no matter which way he's going, Thomas will always face forwards. But that's not the case here. It should also be noted that Wilbert, for some reason, runs Thomas on his layout not as a push-pull, and has him facing north, pulling his coaches backwards when he departs Ffarquhar. So, is he a push-pull or not, Wilbert? Personally, I prefer him as a push-pull, since it's more interesting. So for the sake of consistency here, I think it makes the most sense for Thomas to face south. So he will travel forwards on his first journey down. He backs up to the milk van, and it is coupled behind Clarabelle. He departs at 8 o'clock sharp. Like Daisy, he will also run to Tidmouth on this journey to meet the Wild Nor'wester. Percy waits at Elsbridge for Thomas to pass him. Around 8:10, Thomas arrives and drops off the milk van for the dairy. He then resumes his position and continues on. Daisy arrives at Tidmouth around 8:20. This is the last that we'll see of her on the branch till the afternoon, so I like to assume that she gets shanghaied to perform work on the main line during this time, perhaps assisting with commuter services to and from Kronk. At 8:35, Thomas arrives at Tidmouth, timed 20 minutes before the Wild Nor'wester departs, giving his passengers traveling to Barrow and beyond plenty of time to make their way over to the train and get settled. A perfect chance to grab a tea at the station's concession stand. Up north at 8:40, Toby leaves the quarry, bound for the harbor. Percy finally reaches Ffarquhar with the pickup at the same time, and wastes no time in sorting his trucks into their designated sidings. He pauses halfway through his shunts to let Toby into the station at 8:50. Toby backs into the platform at Ffarquhar Scarborough fashion, and is signaled away 2 minutes later. Once he's cleared, Percy resumes. Toby arrives at the harbor station around 9:15. At 9:30, Mavis appears via the tramway and brings the first train of stone trucks to Ffarquhar. As she does not wish to sort them herself, Mavis scurries away and leaves Percy to deal with them. Put upon, he grumbles. He prepares to take them to the harbor. 10 minutes later, at 9:40, Percy departs Ffarquhar with the stone. And at 9:45, Thomas departs Tidmouth. He is traveling backwards now, with Clarabelle leading the way. Percy arrives at Elsbridge around 9:50, and has to wait here until Thomas has passed. At 10:10, Toby departs Knapford Harbour, again bound for the quarry. He and Percy pass each other at Torrywreck. At 10:20, Percy arrives at the harbour, and spends the rest of the morning shunting the stone trucks along the quayside to be unloaded into the waiting ships. An unlikely, albeit not impossible, opportunity for a crane to, say, drop a crate of treacle on him while he's doing that. At the same time, Thomas arrives at Ffarquhar. He leaves Annie and Clarabelle at the platform and moves off to be serviced while he waits for his next train. At 10:58, Toby arrives at Ffarquhar. As Annie and Clarabelle are at the platform, Toby bypasses the station and stops at the level crossing to let his passengers disembark. He then trundles on his way along the tramway. When he gets to the quarry, he is sometimes upset to find that Mavis has not shunted the trucks the way he prefers, and may scold her, much to Mavis's annoyance. At 11:45, Percy departs the harbour with the now empty stone trucks. And at 11:48, Thomas departs Ffarquhar again, bound for Knapford this time. He reaches Elsbridge at 12 sharp, and usually Percy is already there waiting for him to pass. But sometimes Percy is delayed, and Thomas is the one who has to wait. This greatly annoys him because he has time to meet his connection with the main line at Knapford on this run. He's a guaranteed connection, after all. Once Percy is clear, Thomas carries on. Up north at the same time, a rather disgruntled Mavis reappears at Ffarquhar at 12:10. She moves off to be refreshed at the fuel depot siding. She uses this opportunity to escape away from the quarry as long as she can, so she doesn't have to listen to Toby nag her about how chaotic she left the sidings up there. "That old fusspot," she mutters to herself. At the same time, Toby departs the quarry again. Thomas reaches Knapford around 12:15, and here he usually chats with Henry or James, or whoever's pulling the stopping service that day. After he arrives, he moves off to the engine shed there for a rest. The morning rush is long over by now, and his next train isn't due until 2:20. At 12:20, Toby trundles through Ffarquhar. He again stops at the level crossing to let his passengers disembark, and waits here on the loop until Percy has arrived. Percy appears at 12:28 with his train of empties, and is signaled straight through along the tramway to the quarry to drop them off. After he's passed, Toby sets off at 12:30, bound for the harbour. Mavis watches all of this from the fuel siding. She hopes and prays that Percy will end up sorting her yard at the quarry for her. While Percy is green, he's not that green. He has his own work to do. He reappears at Ffarquhar shortly after. "Fiddlesticks," grumbles Mavis. Percy begins shunting the trucks from the morning pickup for the return journey. Upon seeing this, Mavis gives it up, and accepts that no one is going to do her work for her. She has to make way at the fuel depot for Daisy, who's due to arrive soon anyways. So she slips away back up to the quarry. Better luck next time, Mavis. At 12:45, Daisy departs Tidmouth, finally making her return to the branch. She passes Thomas snoozing at Knapford, and has a clear path up the line. Around 1 o'clock, Toby reaches the harbour. Daisy pulls into Ffarquhar at 1:20, and after her passengers have disembarked, reverses to the fuel depot siding to be refreshed. And once Daisy is moved, Mavis is flagged into the station yard with the second train of stone for the harbour. She drops them off, and scurries away back to the quarry. Once Mavis is away, Percy is cleared to depart at 1:30 with the stone for the harbour, as well as other trucks he's meant to return to their respective stops. And at 1:50, Toby leaves the harbour bound for the quarry. The two pass each other at Torrywreck. Percy arrives at the harbour around 2, and like earlier, stays a while to shunt the trucks along the quayside. Thomas also comes back to life, and departs Knapford at 2:20. Toby arrives at Ffarquhar at 2:21. By now, Daisy has moved off to the platform ready for her next train. So once again, Toby stops at the level crossing to let his passengers disembark. As soon as he passes, Daisy leaves Ffarquhar 2 minutes later at 2:23. When Toby reaches the quarry around 2:30, he'll either be delighted to find Mavis shunting, or he'll scold her again for letting the sidings get messy. He may move off and go help her. It depends on his mood that day. Thomas and Daisy pass each other at Elsbridge at 2:35, and both reach Ffarquhar and Knapford respectively at 2:50. Daisy continues on to Tidmouth on this journey and arrives at 3 sharp. Daisy is not due up the line for a little while, so we'll assume that she hangs out here at Tidmouth for the time being, chatting with the engines that she meets there. The evening rush will begin soon, so she will help Thomas with the commuters later. At this point in Audrey's timetable, things shift around to accommodate a special rail tour coming up the line. This is where he'd work in an opportunity to feature other character models at exhibitions such as James or Oliver, Stepney, etc. But this is where I'm going to deviate from it to accommodate Thomas's special coach service. Thomas is due to arrive at Tidmouth right after the Wild Nor'Wester at 3:30, so instead of moving off to the shed, Thomas remains at the platform at Ffarquhar, ready to start again. At 3 sharp, Thomas is signaled to move off down the line once more. And at 3:20, Toby leaves the quarry again, bound for the harbor. The Wild Nor'Wester pulls into Tidmouth at 3:30 sharp, and 5 minutes later, Thomas comes hurrying in. He collects his special coach from the bay platform and arranges himself for the return trip. With the special coach a part of his train now, Thomas can't run as a push-pull, so now he will pull the train up the line backwards. Annie is delighted. This is her chance to finally see the view without Thomas in front of her. At 3:45, Thomas leaves Tidmouth, with Annie singing happily. Toby arrives at the harbor around 3:50, and as soon as the line's clear, Percy departs the harbor with the empty stone trucks. He stops at Elsbridge on the way to collect the empty milk van again for its second trip to Ffarquhar. Thomas steams into Ffarquhar at 4:20. 6 minutes later, Percy appears at 4:26 with his trucks. Percy waits in the station siding while Thomas rearranges himself at the front of the train. At 4:35, Thomas steams off. Percy arranges his trucks for Mavis to take away, puts the milk van in its siding, and then moves off to the locomotive lay-by. Here he has a well-deserved rest for a few hours. Once he is out of the way, Mavis is flagged into the station to take the empties away back to the quarry. Toby leaves the harbor at 4:50. Thomas waits at Elsbridge for him to pass, and the two each carry on. Thomas runs to Tidmouth again, and arrives at 5:10. Toby arrives at Ffarquhar at 5:13. Since the station is clear again, he pulls in, and then reverses out to head up the tramway to the quarry. 5 minutes after Thomas has arrived at Tidmouth, Daisy is now clear to leave with her commuters. She leaves at 5:15. At 5:25, she arrives at Knapford, and collects the station staff who are heading home to Ffarquhar. Around the same time, Toby has reached the quarry, and hopefully, by this trip, will be delighted to see that Mavis has finally cleaned up her yard. At 5:50, Daisy arrives at Ffarquhar. She is horrified to see the milk van has somehow returned to the platform, and moves quickly off to the shed before anyone can couple her to it. At her shed, she will rest a while before her evening service. Thomas departs Tidmouth at the same time, now running backwards. He has a clear path up the line. Around 6:20, Toby leaves the quarry again, this time bound for the junction, with the last of the quarry workers heading home. Thomas arrives at Ffarquhar at 6:25. He runs around his coaches and waits at the platform until his next train. 2 minutes later, Toby appears around 6:27. As the platform is occupied, he once again lets his passengers disembark at the crossing. Once Toby is gone, Mavis appears at Ffarquhar one final time around 6:30, with the third and last train of stone for the day. She leaves them in their siding, and as she is done for the day, she moves off to the engine shed to go gossip with Daisy until her next run, and maybe complain about Toby to her. Percy is awoken from his nap, and moves off to take the last stone train. He departs Ffarquhar at 6:47, bound for the harbor. Around 6:55, Toby, Henrietta, and Elsie reach Knapford. They have no more scheduled quarry runs, so the three retire to their shed. They are done for the day. I mean, hey, old folks go to sleep early, after all. At 7:07, Thomas leaves Ffarquhar with his last train bound for Tidmouth. With Thomas gone, Daisy can now make her way to the platform for her last train. She can't escape the milk van this time. She's the last train down, so she will have to drop it off at Elsbridge on her way. I should mention that Audrey's lecture notes mention it's Thomas who's meant to take the milk van down, but as he's still coupled to the special coach here, I decided to give that job to Daisy. She's been trying to avoid pulling it all day, after all. A day on Audrey's railway shows Mavis taking it away at the end of the day, which is pretty fun, and it gave me an idea. Knowing how much Daisy hates pulling anything, Mavis sees it as an opportunity to escape Ffarquhar, and offers to take it down for her. And you just know that Daisy would totally let her too. So the two make a plan. Daisy just conveniently forgets the milk and sets off before she's coupled. And Mavis, waiting in the yard, comes to its rescue. There's definitely story potential here. Not today though. Sorry Mavis, Daisy has responsibilities. Mavis scuttles off defeatedly. Off she goes back to the quarry to bed down. She is done for the day. Percy reaches the harbor at 7:15, and once again spends some time shunting his wagons along the quayside. Daisy leaves Ffarquhar at 7:21 with the last of the Ffarquhar station staff, bound for Knapford. She has a clear line down. She stops at Ellsbridge around 7:32 to drop the milk off, fuming. Thomas reaches Tidmouth by 7:42. The special coach is uncoupled, and he drops it off at the bay platform. The evening rush is over, and his next train isn't due for some time, so he leaves Annie and Clarabelle at the platform, and goes off to chat with the engines in the yard. This is when he got the opportunity to first meet Stepney during his visit. Daisy arrives at Knapford at 7:50, and with her arrival there, great peace falls on the branch for several hours as night rolls in. Back at the harbor, Percy is nearly finished shunting. With the line inactive for several hours, he's clear to leave whenever he finishes. This is Percy's favorite run of the whole day, coasting up the line at night, light engine, with all the signals turning green for him as he approaches. It'd be a great shame if something like, I don't know, a cart of lime got stuck at a crossing and he crashed into it or something. Wouldn't that be a damper? When Percy arrives at Ffarquhar, he moves off to the shed. He is done for the day. The clock strikes 10. Sorry, must go. It's time for my last branch line train. Mustn't be late, says Thomas to whichever engines he's talking to, and hurries off. At 10:05, Thomas is back at Tidmouth's platform, and is ready to depart with his last train of the day. Off he goes, with a clear line ahead of him. At 10:35, a rather empty Daisy departs Knapford, the final service on the branch. Thomas arrives at Ffarquhar at 10:40. He takes Annie and Clarabelle to their shed, and then moves off to his. He is done for the day. Daisy pulls in at 11:04, and then moves off to her shed. She is done for the day. The remaining station staff all lock up for the night, and the day has finished. These hard-working engines all sleep soundly after a long day's work, ready to do it all over again the next day. If you all enjoyed my video on timetables, then boy do I have the video for you. This pick of the week is Thomas and Friends Wonders of Sodor, Timetables Explained by Ben 10 Life. This is a dissection of an entire day's timetable in Wonders of Sodor, what each and every engine in the game is doing at all times throughout the day in timetable mode. I never realized how much work Percy and James do in this game until I watched this video. Topham runs those poor engines ragged. It's fun watching everything all play out consecutively. Makes me appreciate the amount of work that must have went in on Dovetail's part to make sure everything aligned perfectly, and it makes Sodor feel so real. Check it out. I want to give a big thank you to Luke Ryan and the Tallyclin Railway for allowing me to use their footage in this video. I think it really helped put things into perspective visually. Also a big thank you to Luke for helping me through this timetable and explaining some discrepancies to me. I was really thrown on who actually takes the milk down in the evening until I saw the lecture notes. Thank you, Luke. If you'd like to watch the full version of A Day on Audrey's Railway, consider becoming a member of the Tallyclin Railway's channel, and there you can watch it and get some other perks. Link in the description. At the time that this video goes live, we'll be on the move. Our big house move has begun, and we're moving across the country. West Coast to East Coast, baby. It's a huge move. Living on the East Coast is something my wife and I have both wanted to do, and we're finally doing it. It's happening. We're going by road and taking our time to see the country on the way. I'll keep you all updated when we've arrived and settled. That's all from me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you'd like to see another one like this in the future. Perhaps one for the main line? Have a great day, all, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.